and welcome to The Mothers, where we talk to mothers out there making a dent in the universe and raising the next generation. Today, we get to draw on the wisdom of Rana Foroohar. Rana is a global business columnist and an associate editor at the Financial Times. She is also CNN's global economic analyst, a regular feature on NPR, and no stranger to any smart economic/business outlet, having also worked at Time magazine and Newsweek. She's the author of 3 books, all with an eye toward connecting the dots between macroeconomic trends and their implications for the average human. We have Makers and Takers, The Rise of Finance and the Fall of American Business. Then we have Don't Be Evil, How Big Tech Betrayed Its Founding Principles and All of Us, which was a fun read while I was at Google. And her latest book, Homecoming, The Path to Prosperity in a Post-Global World. And she is a mother of 2 kids, plus 2 stepkids, because she just so happened to marry my dad 12 years ago, and I am forever a kid. But here's what you need to know about Rana. She is brilliant. She is funny. She finds the world fascinating and curious. She's wonderfully ambitious. She will cut a bitch for the things that matter. She is, like me, a recovering but also often proud perfectionist. She has a brain that can understand the big, complicated global economic-y things, yet care about them in a way that is entirely human. She's normal. I feel very lucky to be in her orbit. When I first met Rana, I didn't have kids yet, so I looked at her with wonder. She was casually building an impressive career as a hotshot journalist in New York, after semi-recently relocating from the UK. Getting her feet back underneath her after what she describes as an, quote, amicable divorce, all while trying to give her 2 young kids the kind of stability and sense of safety we all strive to offer. She was juggling a ton. And my dad. At the time, I was still at Google, desperate to climb the corporate ladder, become a manager, lead a team, because that's what progress was. That's what success was. That's what accomplishment looked like. But what was such a breath of fresh air was that Rana, possibly more driven than even me, was building a very successful and lucrative career outside of all that. I'm managing a home, she would often say. Why would I also try to manage people at work? It was a quiet insight that really lodged in my brain, and for the next 10 years at Google, it followed me as opportunities to lead a team grew fewer and farther between, and not because I'm entirely incompetent. I chewed on that idea actively and passively because it felt revolutionary. Build a career on my own? Spend time building a platform for your own ideas? Define your own success? Rana and I are not the same, but I see some of myself in her, which is why it was so comforting to see, quote, someone like me be brave, exist outside the system I was told to assimilate to, and ask questions. And also have a life that is rich and full and chaotic and successful, but it's your own. While you'll hear Rana laugh about it now, it has not been remotely easy. There's a ton of sacrifice, a ton of stress, a ton of uncertainty. Every day you wake up and make yourself. But having a role model like Rana has been a source of strength for me. I hope she will be a source of strength and inspiration for you all as well. So please enjoy our conversation with the amazing Rana Foroohar. Cool. Wow, Rana, I can't believe you're here.
Yay! So fun.
This feels so giddy.
I know. I'm so psyched for you guys that you're doing this and it's happening.
It's been
Yeah.
really fun. It's like starting something new. You sort of feel like, okay, the milestone is just starting it. But no, immediately you're like, and now we have to do this. And now we have to do this. And there's always more to be done.
Yeah. And the marketing, I was hearing you talk about that the other day. It's like an entire thing.
Yes. I have a friend, LB, I'm trying to hand that over to her as much as possible. Yes. It's hard to do both. I enjoy marketing if it's not mine, maybe.
Yeah.
But
also, it's a whole other job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also difficult. Technology is hard. We realize
technology is hard. Yeah. It's funny. I've been paying my daughter to just be me on social media, like do the things, send us a newsletter, whatever. But I actually feel like I need to give her a raise because
it is a lot. It's a lot. And it's funny. I think everyone wishes they didn't have to do it. Mm-hmm. Like it's that form of marketing. And there used to be marketing that was sort of enjoyable on the creative side. Now it just feels like an anxiety and something you have to do in a reaction. Like it's just stress oriented as opposed to
shadow work.
Creating.
It's like, because it's to everything. You need it for everything. I mean, I don't know anybody that isn't doing it. Even in the neighborhood, if you're doing like volunteer work, whatever, you have to be doing the marketing too.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And of course, it all falls to us.
Yeah.
Yay.
Because we're willing to say yes. Okay, so just protecting your time, Rana. So what we like to do is kick off with a little bit of hearing sort of your version of your story, which I also think is just a good psychological exercise. Every time we've done it, people are like, oh, maybe that's why my life makes sense. They're like, I've never really thought about the story of my life before.
Yeah.
You probably have.
This must be like therapy for people. I mean, honestly.
Everyone has said that within the interview. They're like, wow, this feels like therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
We call it therapy too. Like if I'm out with a friend, I'm like, oh, gotta go home for therapy. It's this.
Yes.
I'm like, so.
And you're getting paid, not paying. Which
yes. But yeah, we could kick it off with sort of how you've done so many things in so many different ways and so many different continents. I'm curious how you think about kind of how you get to the Rana of today. If in retrospect it makes sense, what the through lines might be.
Yeah. Well, I would say failure is how I got here. I was a failed pre-med student. I got, let's see, I got a B- my freshman year in bio, and then a C in general chem, and then an F in orgo, and then I was done.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Feels familiar.
And thank God at Barnard you had to major in something else. Like you did the pre-professional, but you had to major in something else. So I was majoring in English, and I was always creative, good fast reader, all that kind of stuff. So I just continued along that path, and then I just graduated and had to get a job because my parents were like, we're paying for school and then you're not getting a dime afterwards. And but because I had done the pre-professionals, I graduated a semester early, and I lived at school and interned at a magazine, and I just immediately found my people. It's magazine people, and I think journalists in general they're just fun people to hang out with. They're super creative, they're super curious, they're irreverent, and more than the work, I just ended up loving the people and kind of marveling at being able to wake up, as you all are doing now, and get curious about something or someone, and then, oh, this is what I'm going to do today. And then I went, at the time, politics which is what a lot of people kind of aspire to straight out of school to get into, was a really, really hard thing to break into in New York, journalism wise. I mean, people came, Sarah, this is your turf. They came like straight out of the Harvard Crimson and went to the New York Times, and there was like this path, and so I went into business. I went to work at Forbes magazine. I went into business journalism because I was good with numbers, and that was like, it was greenfield. It was something that, that I could get into, and it kind of took off from there. But actually, to get to the mothers, I would say that becoming a mom actually is responsible in some ways for what I consider to be the greatest successes of my career, which is I had to make, there was I continued along with magazines. I ended up working at Newsweek, at Time, at the Financial Times as a foreign correspondent. I worked all over the world, but there was a particular point, I would say, like maybe in my early 30s, where I was on track to maybe be an editor in chief at some point. Like I was going into the top tier of management at a magazine. But what I was realizing is I was going to be tethered to a desk, and I'd had Daria by that, my oldest daughter by that point, and I just couldn't see it. I just couldn't see like not being there for breakfast, not being there for dinner, not because I was like, I thought she could handle it, but I'm just like, I was just into that. I needed to have that flexibility. And so at the time I was working in Europe, and I'm like, I'm just going to be a foreign correspondent, probably for the rest of my life. And that's how I'm going to make it work, because you can work on your own time. I was getting up early at that point. I would like get up at 5 a.m. and work till maybe 8 or something. And then I'd be with her for a couple of hours, and then the nanny would come. And then I would actually beg off like pretty early, maybe 4 or 5, and then be with her for a few hours and then go back online. And it just worked. Like it felt like I could control everything. And so that kind of sense of even at that stage, building a kind of a career that was more freelance-y, more on my own terms, portfolio, just I then could add different pillars and like ramp them up and pull them back. And I think that's kind of what made it work for me, actually. That sense of I'm going to juggle because I want to be with these kids and have that experience. And also, P.S., like exercise and be with my friends and, do all the things, um, made it possible.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny because that was a jumping off point I wanted to bring up with you because I remember when I first met you that, well, maybe not the first thing what you said, but early on, I remember you,
First
you
was
were
like,
like
oh my God,
correspondent versus
I
editor.
really want you to like me.
Be cool, be cool.
Well, I remember early days, when you kind of came into my life, I was trying to figure out career, and I was also, coming out of a very achievement oriented institution slash family, and success looked like management, and the more people that are under you, the more successful you are and the bigger your title is. I didn't know how to explain why, but it also, there were elements of that that didn't necessarily feel appealing, and it was really helpful to see you, and you talked about it very openly as someone who is very driven, and you talked about how you proactively said, I actually am more interested in doing this contributor. I don't really want to manage people. That seemed like I'm managing my household. Like I also am not like, why do I have to do this on top of it? There's so much that comes with that actually takes away from my maybe enjoyment of the work, but also enjoyment of your broader life. And I think that's something that a lot of people, I don't know, I was in tech and it was like, are you an individual contributor or are you a manager? And really there was like, until you were a manager, unless you were purely an engineer, until you were a manager, you were still kind of a child in the organization. And children were going up to the age of 45, 50. So it was kind of this weird kind of plateauing. But I was curious how you, like some people will look at that and say, oh, here's yet another example of someone who didn't lean in, which makes my skin bristle at that phrase.
Yeah.
But I love how you're describing it as more a choice to find agency in your life. But how, maybe talk about how, to someone that would be like, oh, Rana didn't lean in. She gave up, she could be running the FT or she could be running Forbes, but instead she's a correspondent because she's a mother. Like, I don't know. How do you, what do you say to them? Yeah.
What I say to them is I'm making 3 times as much as most of the managers I know in journalism.
Yes.
Yes. No, it's, I mean, but honestly, and this was actually a big part of it. So this really has nothing to do with being a mother, but I remember one of the reasons I kind of like awoke to, oh my God, there is this whole other career path is I was working at Newsweek as a senior editor, which was one of those jobs that was a bit of a grind. Like, it's that kind of before you get to the point of management where you actually have more control and you can leave the office early, it's like you're carrying all the water. And I'm like, oh God, and you're still not making that much money because it's journalism. And I was working for Fareed Zakaria at the time, who was the editor of Newsweek International. And I remember going over, this was back when we had faxes. I had gone over to send a fax. And there was a fax coming out of the fax machine. And I just picked it up. And it was from his speaking agency. And it was the tally of like what he had done and what he had earned that year. And I'm like, oh my God, like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah. Like the space-time fabric is bending. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become a brand because that is the only way that I am going to have control and control. Like, and I feel like that's the thing that appeals to a lot of working mothers. Or frankly, a lot of mothers in general is control. It's all about control. Can you get control of your time? However you're going to do that. Can you get control of like the environment? I remember when Daria was little, just like I was obsessed, and this probably says a lot about me and being a first time mother, but I was obsessed with blackout blinds. I was like, I've got to control like the light.
For sure.
I have to control.
Still definitely.
We vacation with blackout blinds. Oh, you can't. Yes.
I did that too.
For sure.
I did that too. Yeah. I'm so glad. Sarah, you and I are like
no control over anything. So you're like, if I could control light,
totally.
I'm God.
Light, sound, because you control light and sound, you can control sleep.
Exactly.
You can control sleep.
Then you can control your emotions.
Is in balance.
Totally.
So it's like, but it's really about control. And and I think that actually gets into I'm just kind of on the fly here, but I think that gets into the bigger meta issue of work and how it is structured and control. And I think that the pandemic kind of showed us that it's not just working moms, it's everybody that wants more control. And the workplace, and frankly, the still mostly male top brass that run it, are in the process of trying to wrest back control.
Yeah.
And they're not getting it completely because people, particularly top talent, are just like, no. No.
Yeah.
This is also, I'll just tell you, I'm reminded of, I once interviewed Warren Buffett. I spent like 48 hours with Warren Buffett. And one of the most important things he said to me, which I will always remember, is give yourself an hour every day, make it the best hour of the day. And I just thought that was so, it's because it's about control. It's about you cannot let the job, or frankly the kid, or the mother title or the job title, define you. You've got to get back, control the situation.
What does Warren Buffett do for the best
That's
hour
his
of his
hour.
day?
Yeah.
Crushes a lot of Cokes, Diet Cokes.
Crushes a lot of Cokes, probably goes around turning out the lights. And talk about thrift. I mean, he honestly did. First of all, his office is in something that looks like a strip mall, and he literally goes around like turning out the lights. Like this is, I guess, how you become a billionaire. You're saving 2 cents at a time.
Yeah.
Turn off some lights.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be right back.
Okay, so you're at these magazine publications and you're like chugging along in this potentially editor track, and you have this awakening to, well, what if I built my own brand? I could be more effective, more in control, and also make more money. Why isn't everyone doing that? Or why was it sort of a secret? What gave you the sort of chutzpah to go for it?
It's a really great question. I think in some way need. So I got I'm divorced and remarried to your wonderful father. Yay. And very, very amicably divorced. I'm extremely close. Actually, both your dad and I are very close to my ex-husband, his wife. The families are like big blended families, which is very cool. But I found out, Kamba's my ex, and I decided to divorce when I was pregnant with my second child, Alex. And to his great credit, and this is one of the reasons I will be forever, grateful to him. He said, "Look, we had been foreign correspondents, and we'd been moving around a lot, and we were like, oh my God, we got to pick a city, and be there and figure it out." And at the time we were living in London, and that was actually, particularly for a mom, it was a very nice place to be. It's a nice, cushy place to be. It's much cushier than New York. But I was looking ahead at my financial future and being like, I gotta make some dosh, and so I thought we got to get back to New York, and we came back, and I could barely make the math work at that time. We actually, it was funny, we bought this house that I currently live in now. My ex-husband and I bought it and duplexed it because we had a 4-year-old and a brand new baby, and we're like, how are we going to make this work? As two journalists, we spent every cent we had, bought the townhouse, duplexed it, and the kids went up and down. He was upstairs, I was downstairs, and they went up and down for several years, which was actually amazing, and built-in babysitting, and like each of us could have date night, and it was just, so all I can say is like amicable divorce, really good thing. Also really good thing for if you're a working mom, because like I actually found, this is just a little side note, and then I'll get back to the kind of financial need question. I often would be talking to other married working moms, and they'd be fighting more than I was for time for themselves. But because I had built in 2 nights a week, the kids are with him, like the kids, and it was just like, oh, so that actually also helped me. And the fact that we had, he and I were both traveling a lot. And so we had a kind of an ongoing conversation of how can we make all this work? And so I could go to him and be like, listen, I need to go to China for 10 days. And can you take the kids? Yes. And helpful that you're in the same house upstairs. And then, he has to go to Iran for 2 weeks. Like I take the kids. So that was really helpful. But the financial need question really, really galvanized me, and it lit a fire under me. It actually validates everything my own parents had done for me, which is they put us through school debt free, but that was it. We were on our own after that. And I've done that with my kids. I just felt like I looked at the math. I'm like, I've got to make twice what I'm making if I want to be comfortable, put these kids through college, pay this mortgage, and save for a pension. And so then I got really focused because and again, I think this is a working mom thing, like, da, 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 da. It's like you're looking at the day and you're structuring it. You're looking at the next 5 years and you're structuring it.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to do? And so then I thought, okay, well, what I need to do is I need to be able to give speeches for money. What do I need to do that? I need a book. What do I need to do when I'm marketing a book? I need to have a TV contract. Like, so like, and I'm a very hard worker, but I also got super lucky. Like, there are a lot of hard workers. Guy at Pret is working just as hard as me. And I had great mentors and I was kind of in the right place at the right time. I also, to be honest, I made some choices that were more about strategy than pleasure. Like, I love, like all journalists, I love doing big feature stories and doing lifestyle stories and whatever. But was looking out and thinking there are very few women or even people that have all their hair covering international economics. And like, okay, this is unique. Like, I have a niche here. I can make this work. And so I was just leveraging. And then once I got like the kids' college money put away, I was like, okay, I can like now open up 20% space for myself. And then, okay, now I can make some pension. And it was just, but the first 10 years back in the States was just like all strategy all the time. It was like it was the career equivalent of like, when's nap time? When do the blackout blinds go down? Like, is the food pureed?
Sounds exhausting. And you're sitting here being like, that was so fun. But it can't have been, was it? I'm like blown. I mean, I guess when you're in the zone and just doing a lot, like, yes, it's stressful, but if it's all kind of, in some ways, if there's always the next step that's happening, that allows it to feel productive. But it is also a lot.
It was a lot. I mean, actually, it's really funny. I probably shouldn't bring your dad into this, but I will just he used to annoy me because he'd be like, you're working too hard. You should like do things for love. And I'm like,
I wish I could.
I don't have time for that. Yeah.
You know what, Yeah. But now I am actually, because this is, I would say, like, my younger one just went to college in the fall. And so the last 6 months has been like, oh, I've had a little space and I've been able to metabolize all the accomplishments and all the progress and have time to just, I mean, like, I just actually had a meeting with my agent on Tuesday about my fourth book, and I would have done that if I was back in no mode. I would have sold that book 18 months ago. But I'm like, I'm going to give this a little more time. I'm going to see how I'm feeling. I'm going to see what kind of book I want to do. And I feel like now I can take pleasure in the things that were just challenging the time. But yeah, I was on autopilot. I mean, and again, it's funny, maybe because I'm doing the Mother's Podcast, but I'm thinking a lot about the overlap between the way I used to wake up, particularly with Daria, my youngest, and structure a day. Like, this is the way the next 12 hours are going to go, and in order to keep everybody sane, and in order for me to get a good night's sleep. And that's kind of how I structured 10 or 15 years of my life. And now people aren't melting down, and maybe they don't need a nap, and maybe we can like go out for a walk at a different time when they don't like actually have to be sleeping for 30 minutes during the walk. I'm looking at V because I'm sure like this is this must be your sweet spot, right? Like figuring out how to structure.
I know.
100%.
These baby is crying right now.
actively crying, but that's
not napping as we were hoping.
The damn blackout shades. Can you hear him?
I know.
I can, but it's because I'm a mother also. I could always hear a quiet
the
baby
boobs are leaking.
crying.
I'm like, tell me more about your motivation.
Oh my God. Can I tell you a boob leaking story? Actually, this is really funny. And then I have to tell you one other super funny story from a mother friend of mine. Okay, so when I was pregnant, when I had Alex, my second one, I was living in Europe. So I got 6 months maternity leave, which was amazing. And amazing. But with him, I needed to, because I was going through a separation, I needed to go back and start working sooner and just get back in the saddle. And so I had gone back 3 months in, which sounds like probably a lot to American audiences. In Europe, it was like, oh my God, you should still be in bed. I just heard the cry. It's great. Right on cue.
Upstairs with him, but
Right on cue. And I get back, and so my first week back at work was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, which is kind of like a high stakes, high stakes event. And
you're still in diapers yourself. You're like,
I'm still like bleeding, and I'm just like crazed. And my ex-husband was looking at apartments in New York, and he's calling me. He's like, "Don't come back to London. I want you to get on a plane to New York. I've got 12 houses for us to look." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." Been a daze. I was interviewing the Pakistani General Musharraf. And my boobs started leaking, and I didn't realize it until after the interview. And I go into the bathroom, and I'm just like, I don't know, like hopefully it's a family-friendly country,
Totally. Good for you.
But the other really great like mom embarrassment working mom thing. My friend Mary Egan, who Sarah, I think you might know, who was a strategist. At Starbucks and partner at BCG, was telling me one time when she was at BCG, she had 3 kids, like boom, 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 back to back. She was a partner. She was on a conference call. And at this particular moment, one of her kids was very, very interested in the difference between a penis and a vagina. And so she was like on mute, like trying to tell the kid about, so this is a penis, daddy has a penis, mommy has a vagina, like this is what they... And like back and forth, back and forth. And then at some point she accidentally unmuted herself or didn't mute herself. And she's like, "I told you, daddy has a penis and mommy has a vagina." And the senior partner's like, "Okay, well, thank you for that, Mary."
That's incredible. I mean, I do think one of the things I wanted to hear from you, because you operate in such like prestigious circles, was, I mean, every mother in some ways, their moments constantly doing everything all at once. But then there are big sort of on stage moments where everything is happening all at once. How were you willing to sort of like let that roll then? Did Mary actually laugh at it at the time, or was she mortified? Or is this more like war stories looking back now that you've defeated the enemy? It's all amusing.
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think I had varying experiences at the time. Like, there's always that like, holy shit, mortification moment. But then I think there's also a moment that I suspect other moms will relate to, which is, well, you just get on with it. And frankly, like, and this is, I think, one of the things that actually makes being a woman, a working mom, someone who has a life and a career and a family, I feel like it's an easier way to be a human being, is that my kids were 100% the most important thing. I'm not, and so yeah, it was a little embarrassing that like my boobs are, leaking in front of General Musharraf, but at the end of the day, like pumping that breast milk was actually the priority.
Yes.
So, so like that, and I feel very comfortable with that, and I feel actually quite strong. I felt strong at the time. I feel strong now saying, you know what, I mean, I think I told you the story once, Sarah, that when I came back and I was in that, oh my God, how am I going to make enough money zone, I at one point thought I was going to have to leave journalism. And so I was looking at some high profile PR jobs, and one of them was at Google, actually. And I was, I got to kind of several interviews in, and I got a job offer, and we were sort of talking about the details. And I said, now I really need to know that I can have breakfast and dinner with my kids. Like I will go online till midnight afterwards. I will get up at 4 a.m, but I need to know that. And they're like, yeah, we're not sure that we can give it. And I'm just like, okay, that's my bottom line. And I felt very comfortable with that. I think it's harder. I have friends, my friend Gillian Tedd, actually, who's a fellow columnist and also runs King's College in the UK. She really likes running things. She likes those positions of leadership and being in charge of a lot of people. And I think the decisions get harder and the binds get trickier when you really are in the job that, frankly, it is client facing, and you actually can't get out of that meeting and you have to go to that dinner. And I think those are tougher decisions. One thing I found, though, actually, frankly, constitutional inability to totally inhabit a corporate role and to like put that a big guy suit on kind of became a weird advantage for me, or at least at first a differentiator, particularly on the speaking circuit. So one thing, like on the speaking circuit, is interesting. People are hiring for a lot of reasons. Sometimes they hire because your name's Tom Friedman and like you're famous, and so we're going to hire you to do this speech. Sometimes they hire, which is generally the case with me, that I'm a subject matter expert. I've written a really important book. I know a lot, and so you're going to hire me. But I hear now from clients through my agent that they're like, they hired you because you wrote this book or because you know about economics, but they rehired you because you were really approachable. You were nice.
You were
Like you
human.
asked, you were human. Like you cared about what their kid was doing. And I feel like that's something, just the very fact that you guys came up with this podcast because you were interested in like other women's inner lives and the experience, I feel like that is it's such an underrated plus, like and connector. And I find that it's connecting me not just to other women in the workplace, but I remember one time being in an event with a bunch of CEOs. I was speaking, and I was at one of these endless, dinners, performative dinners where everyone's like, ha, 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 and they're wearing their like work casual, which is like as much of a predictable uniform as anything else. And so I'm just like, I get really bored at these things. And, I'm forever a journalist, and I just want to know about your inner life and like what, what you're really. So I'm sitting next to some CEO, and I remember who it was now. And I was feeling really lonely at that conference because I do get lonely traveling like by myself and being in hotel rooms. Like sometimes it's great. That first night you check into the Four Seasons, somebody else paying for it, you get in the big bathtub, like that's awesome. But then 2 or 3 nights in and you're like, why am I here? Like I'm dead inside. So I'm sitting next to this guy.
Love you.
And I was sitting next to this guy, and I turned to him and I'm like, do you ever get lonely traveling? And it was like the CEO mask just fell. And he's like, he's like, yeah, I feel like I can't talk to anybody about this stuff. And he was saying how he had to go on a big conference call and give like some important announcement. And one of his right-hand staff had quit like 45 minutes before. And he was just devastated, and like he had all these feelings and was almost in tears, but couldn't show any of this, had to be the CEO, had to be like, and I'm like, everybody's feeling this way. I just think women and maybe in particular working moms are more likely to talk about it because we're always trying to hold those two things.
Well, actually a question on that, to your experience, but also the folks that you interact with. I think even this goes back to this like contributor versus editor management track. I agree with you. Like I see the list of the wealthiest, most powerful corporate people in America, and they're, essentially all dudes, or they're women that inherited it from a dude. And I'm sure they're sad, or I'm sure at some point they were lonely and sad and regretful. And then they said, I'm just going to go all in on this. Like, and I'm going to sacrifice
You're in
so
too
much
deep at that point.
And theoretically, we want women in those roles to do it differently, theoretically, so that they can show up as a CEO and be inclusive and warm and human and potentially make different leadership choices. But I also think, for the reasons that you opted not to run those massive organizations, you have zero control. It seems like. In the process of coming up with this podcast, I was sort of thrown into this wonderful group of kind of I don't feel like I'm in middle age, but 40 somethings, whatever, who are kind of in the same, they're
new 30.
Exactly. They're evolving. They're in a pivot phase. They had big, real quote unquote job. They were COOs, CMOs, CEOs, partners at various organizations, and then kind of looked up for a second and were like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I'm just curious how you think about, for yourself and also just in the world that you exist in, like this tension between America wants corporate to be different, and they wouldn't describe it this way, but potentially be more female value driven. And yet there's just really, it's not an attractive role to women that are, in my mind, like sort of the woman that you want at the top. It's not attractive to that person. I'm curious, like how you think about that.
Yeah, it's a super interesting question. And I think I kind of report this question
Right.
sometimes because I think that we're in a major pivot point right now with what corporate America is going to look like, not just in terms of the people that inhabit the top leadership, but the structure and, what companies are, how they're going to be structured going forward. Couple of things. So pre-pandemic, we already knew that, women and minorities in particular had higher rates of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And one of the many reasons for that is that they just find at some point, I don't want this life,
Yeah.
and I need to make money and I'm driven. And I know, I mean, I would say the highest percentage of my female friends who could have gone that role, who either were a CEO or could have been a CEO, they've shifted in they run their own consultancies.
Yes.
They start nonprofits, they do things that are super high achieving, but they're not going to fit in that box.
Yeah.
And I will say that when I go to to Davos or to other, it's still a lot of guys in that box.
Yeah.
But there's also a generational change happening. So a lot of, I think we're beginning to see the percentages shift because some of the old guys are dying or,
Yeah.
being like Me Too'd out or
Yeah.
whatever, and so that now the question will be, what does the new leadership look like, and is it really going to evolve the company? And I think the pandemic was interesting because there's kind of a war right now between not just women, but everybody voting with their feet and saying, we're not psyched about this environment. We don't like the way it was working. We do need changes. And it's not just about lifestyle, it's about productivity. It's about, I mean, I frankly could not, I literally tell people at work this, I can't do my job in the office. I cannot get enough work done. I'm very selfish. Like I need to lock in and I just can't do it when I'm being distracted all the time. Um, so but companies are fighting back. The bosses are saying come back in 5 days a week. This Sergey Brin thing, like if you're not working 60 hours in the office, you're lazy. Like, come on, man. Really. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. The fact that tech, this is another trend. Like, are we at an inflection point? I don't know. But the fact that tech represents such a huge percentage of the economy, and that it's driven largely by young white men, many of whom seem to have the EQ of like an 11-year-old boy, so, how does that go?
Yeah.
I really do think it's going to evolve, for all kinds of reasons. I think the structure of business is changing in such a way that a lot used to live just within single company entities and it was easier to control. And that's still the case for some of the biggest tech firms. But by and large, there's more, joint ventures, there's more partnerships, there's more working with contractors, there's more pulling in outside IP. And so there's kind of a permeable border into the corporation that there didn't used to be. There's more flexibility. And I just look at younger people. We'll see if this changes when they have mortgages and kids, but I look at younger people, men and women, and I don't see them choosing this life. When you see polls of like the most glamorous or desired jobs for kids, it's never the CEO of X. It's always like
YouTube celebrity.
Yeah,
exactly.
Instagram influencer.
Yeah,
100%.
Which is problematic in its own way, but it does.
Exactly. That's another show.
Yeah, exactly. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
One thing that you talked about earlier in the conversation was how you were. I'm 100% proud to be a mom. Like that's the most important thing to you. So if anything, if I'm leaking and like irrelevant, like I'm going to carry on and do my stuff. How do you think, and I'm guessing it may have evolved over time, but yes, most important to you, but how present is being a mother to you as a source of identity, whether you were at work early on? My experience was kind of sort of maybe suggest that you're a mother, but like don't bring to the forefront kind of mother at home, worker at the office. But I'm curious how that shows up. What your experience has been with identifying as a mother.
It's interesting. I think two things. So when the kids were young and they were babies still, and I was a foreign correspondent, frankly, this is maybe a little narcissistic or arrogant or something. Like it used to make me feel kind of like, yeah, I'm tough. Like I'm gonna throw Daria in the baby Bjorn and head off to the assignment and like, look at me, I'm rocking it,
Yeah.
And but interestingly, when I came back to New York, and I was in the head office, then it was like, yeah, don't talk too much about the kids.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was more like, which is kind of speaks to I thought it always made me better. It made me, I'm like a super strong multitasker. I'm unbelievably good with time,
Right.
And so, but then when it came to sitting in the meetings with a bunch of guys, it just became clear that this was not really a topic. And when I had a brief foray when I lived in London into venture capital. Oh my God. Like, not only do not have kids or pretend you don't have kids, you don't have a husband, you don't have a life, you don't exercise, it's, that was a whole nother hardcore-ness.
Yeah. And related to identity, your profession is very identity oriented in that it's your name on the byline.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been hearing in conversations with mothers is a little bit of tension or apprehension or curiosity about, I love being a mother. I am a mother. And I need to make sure that I don't lose my identity entirely to being, quote, just a mother. How do you think about overall sort of preserving Rana within mother, amazing journalist, writer? Like, who is Rana actually in those because you chose a profession that sort of feeds your identity, or is Rana, there's yet another place for Rana that Rana needs to show up and have space?
Well, honestly, part of my choices were about mothering, but part of them were about, like, I actually don't have the constitution to function well unless I'm doing a lot of self-care.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I had a Pilates class today before I did this podcast. I would 100% beg off work in the middle of the afternoon and go take a park walk if I hadn't done that. And I'll multitask. Like, I like to go get my blow dry and bring my papers with me. I don't know. I need a lot of sleep. I really honestly feel, and I have friends that are constitutionally able to do more, and they do more, but just because you can do it, I'm not so sure that means you should do it all the time. But I don't function well unless I get an hour of exercise a day and I get like at least 8 hours, preferably 9 of sleep. So it kind of like sorts for making choices that are compatible with that. And it's one reason that I realized venture capital would never work out for me. Finance would never work out for me. The culture isn't built for that. You just can't do it. Whereas journalism kind of is, and the fact that it's relatively low paying for the amount of education and skills that you need, it creates space to, and by the way, I wish that was something that people talked about in colleges, like in your junior or senior year, when you're trying to think about where you're going to go. I wish that they talked about that kind of stuff. Like, okay, if you go to do that internship at Goldman Sachs, like, you will not be sleeping, you'll not be, and that, hey, or if you're a lawyer, you can do it this way, or I just think that's so important to think about.
Yeah. I wish, I wonder how it would have landed. Our first interview was someone who, she went straight into law, out of Harvard, and which is a grind situation. And she described in law school, there was a panel. She was like, it didn't really land well in this like room of everyone that would go to law school out of college, straight out of college, which was basically kind of what it wasn't about the work hours, and maybe that did come up, but it was related to how to, if you're interested in having kids, like how that sort of fits in with this career trajectory. And she said to her, it resonated. I'm not sure she was like raising her hand to go deeper, but to everyone else, it was a little bit, and it didn't necessarily land or make sense. But to her, she was like, this really resonated with some deep knowing that I had. And she ultimately got out of law and she runs her various own things. So I do agree. I think we shouldn't be pretending that we can do all of these things all at once, which actually gets me to this question of having it all and doing it all. And it's been interesting to like put this to various folks of this idea of women having it all. We're doing all the things. Can we have all the things? I think there was a period of time where having it all was sort of like this, I don't know, this concept that everyone was frustrated about. And maybe the world, like more existential threats have entered the American psyche. So we're not focused on that as much. But how do you think
Having it
about
all, but in a different country, potentially.
yes, exactly.
Not
We've got to
in the
move
US.
on. How have you wrestled, or how was this idea of having it all shown up? Like, is it something that you ever thought about until there were articles about it? And then once there were articles about it, like, what do you make of it?
That's interesting. You know, this is maybe personal and specific to me, or maybe specific to people that have been through divorce. And again, an amicable divorce, I think an acrimonious divorce is very different, but an amicable divorce actually created, when my children were younger, a lot of space for me because I didn't have a husband.
Mm-hmm.
When I got remarried, it became actually suddenly more challenging. And like I wanted it to be like, oh my gosh, I have this
Yeah.
wonderful new person in my life. But there's now like not even 30, but there's like 50% more time,
Right.
you know, need, like there's a slot there that it needs to be managed. And that that was hard. And at that point, when I was remarried, the kids were still relatively young. I was in got to make money, got to sell books, got to put away the retirement funds mode. I really gave up friends. That was the thing that fell apart. I would do phone calls, but I wouldn't see people the way I used to. And that's been something that wonderfully has kind of come back online in the last couple of years for me.
Yeah.
And in fact, this past year, it's just been kind of like a personally challenging year in a lot of ways, and a big pivot point for me, like in my own, what do I want the next 5 or 10 or 20 years to look like? And so I've been scheduling, like every month I go and see a friend now, and they tend to be spread out. So I went to Europe and I skied with a friend in Switzerland. I went to Jackson Hole last weekend. I'm going to Seattle. So like having that space available. But again, that was really the thing, talking about having it all. I gave up friendship time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like a weird thing to come out on the other side of that. It felt lonely,
Yeah.
A couple of years ago when Alex, my youngest, was kind of never home. He was on 1,000 teams. He was doing a bunch of stuff. And I'm just like, wait a minute, I need friends. Like
Yeah.
what just happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of what gave, I think.
Totally. I think that happens at all ages. And I do agree that there's yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you have a partner who's sort of fills up your cup, great. But I also think it is useful to have you can just gab and confide in particularly other women and other mothers, maybe even
Yeah.
most importantly, when you're
Yeah.
together. How are those other mothers doing? What's
Well,
everyone dealing? I mean, you're sort of like on this, like getting the kids out of the house stage of mothering, but I don't know I'm curious
so
how everyone's holding up.
so this is kind of a good news story. So like most of the
Give it to
moms that
us.
Okay, so I'll tell you, my friend Mary, who we've already talked about,
Mm-hmm.
we were on the phone the other day, and she's divorced herself, 3 kids, kind of the youngest one has finally launched. She has a new partner and they're doing a lot of traveling. And we were talking the other day, and I had just been away on a trip with my husband, and I'm like, it's so great, this empty nest thing. Like suddenly there's all this time. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, yeah, it's like being in your 20s, but with money.
Love that.
And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
because, and this I feel like is very unique, maybe to my generation, or maybe like one generation before, where you're healthy enough, you're young enough and healthy enough, and the kids are launched.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have this second era in a
Yeah.
way. And I know friends, I mean, in journalism, I know a number of friends who go back out into the field, and become correspondents again, but
Yeah.
as adults, maybe with a partner, maybe not, but like traveling in this new way.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that are starting businesses, getting involved. I mean, I just joined the New York City YMCA board, like getting involved more in nonprofit stuff and
Yeah.
community, and just feeling like so energized and like, but smarter,
Yeah.
and like not insecure, not at least, I won't say not insecure, not as insecure.
Yeah.
I'm not
Sure.
worried, like only like 1 out of every 3 times am I more worried about myself, like in any given
Yeah.
room.
Yeah. That's nice, because one of the things that added this idea, the concept of having these kinds of discussions was meaningful. There was some urgency added to it when I was hearing a lot of people talk about who didn't have kids yet. They were like, I don't even know if I want to have kids. Not because the world's ending necessarily, but because they'll lose who they are. They'll never achieve their dreams. Now it's going to be all about the kids. This is the end of them. And it's nice. I was hopeful that through these conversations, we would realize that's actually a relatively short-sighted view of what becoming a mother is about. But I don't know if you have thoughts on that idea, and if you're hearing that, because I know there has been sort of a media cycle around, birth rates declining a little bit, and what that means, what women are seeing when they look to the idea of becoming a mother.
I sometimes think anybody that is thinking about having a child these days and really looking at the hard economic reality of it has got to think, whoa, like, it gets pretty real. I kind of wonder if falling birth rates aren't about the difficulty of having a middle class life these days.
Very true.
It's just like, and this is, getting back to the portfolio career thing, honestly, if it might have been different if I'd been married with another, high income earning partner at the time my kids were little. But in the situation that I was in, and even frankly, for most people I know that were dual incoming journalists, you had to think about at least one freelance hustle to think about, I'm going to be able to afford housing in a major city, put kids into a private college, not even a private secondary school, and retire at some point. And I think that kind of 3-gig economy trend is, I wonder if that's not driving some of the falling birth rate trend, which, if that's the case, it would follow on what happened in Europe. You've already seen, like, for the last 10 or 20 years, you saw in places like Italy, in places like France, birth rates declining because women and families just felt like, I can't afford this. I also think there's that interesting kind of niche trend that's also been in the media about people that are super earners, particularly dual income super earners, having that fourth child. It's like the kind of prestige child that if you live on Park Avenue and you have that and your private equity, then you can do that. But I think there's a real bifurcation happening. Also, the other thing I will say, just as covering this economically in my own reporting, younger people are living with their parents for longer or are dependent on their parents for longer. So I think that there's a stretching out of the cycle of when marriage and birth and even like launching as an independent individual is happening. Statistically, that's true. It's not really happening until the late 20s now, whereas that used to be an early 20 phenomenon.
Yeah, very true. No, and I'm glad you raised it, because I think one thing that's always quietly undercutting everything I'm saying on this podcast is this a wildly privileged discussion to be having of identity as a mother, and these ideas of trying to find something where you have control and agency. But I
don't know, though, I just, to give you the flip side, I do think this is a relevant conversation at all kind of socioeconomic spectrums, because because I do a lot of public speaking and TV, I'm often sitting in like hair and makeup rooms, or I'm in a hotel having somebody like do that. And those workers are generally women, and they'll often be single moms. They'll often have kids. And that is their side hustle, to be in my hotel room doing this at 8 a.m. And then we'll get into that discussion. How old are your kids? What are they doing? Oh yeah, I really love doing this because I can build my, my time around pickup or da. So like, it's a conversation I think the juggling and the pieces are the conversation, and they're happening at all the different levels.
Yes. Maybe now that it feels everyone's doing the juggle, it feels like to drop a ball feels catastrophic, maybe in a way that it didn't always feel quite as catastrophic. But all right, if you have a minute, we like to close with these 3 quickish, shortish answer questions. Rapid fire is what the world calls them, but that feels like we're in a war zone.
Flash round. Okay. We'll call it flash round.
Please be gentle.
So if you could go back and tell your new mom self one thing, what would it be?
Take more time. I just felt I was so anxious. Here's evidence. One of the reasons I was doing Pilates this morning is that my pelvis is constantly torqued because I went on an elliptical machine 48 hours after giving birth to my first child, because I wanted to pretend that everything had not changed, and that I was going to be able to have a body again, and I was going to be able to have time again. And I, just kind of wrecked my All my like ligaments, still repairing that, and just chill out, like, and try, and it's so hard because everything's new and you're anxious and you're trying to get some control, and it's just, but I wish that I would have just like laid in bed with her for 5 hours and not worried about it.
I know. Totally. I don't know if I can ever get there. I've done it once.
I did.
It was really nice. I had one extra late snooze, let the baby into the bed with me, and I still think about it.
That's
it was
so
that one
interesting.
time. Yeah. All right. If you could go back and provide yourself or your broader family, one thing along this journey of motherhood that would have made it a little bit easier, is there something that comes to mind?
Help me. Ask me what I need. I mean, that's what I would have wanted from them. But really, because we can only control ourselves, I wish I would have been able to ask for more help instead of just thinking that the fastest and best route was to somehow become wildly more efficient about everything myself at all times.
Yes.
Because I made everybody crazy. And I also think it took a toll on my daughter in particular. I see in her some of the like neurotic type A, like unproductive behaviors that I wish that I could say, I am so sorry that I made you think you had to do everything at all times by yourself.
Yeah. Asking for help is hard. My version is I don't want to say out loud the things that I need help with because they're annoying.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask you to
like
go
what?
get diapers.
Like what would be?
I don't want to be like, hey, can you like go bring more diapers down? Like all the minute things that we just do. That I'm annoyed that I'm thinking about them, let alone vocalizing them to someone else.
Shut up, Sarah. Just go get the diaper.
Don't contaminate this environment with those needs.
And that's a whole nother thing. Like, I want everyone to mind read.
Right, of course.
The diaper I want, and that's not fair, but it is a secret desire.
It is. We need, that's what AI should be doing. The weird mother unleashed, mother on the outside.
What she's thinking is.
Exactly. Let's do that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God. I'm going to steal that for a column. That would be such a good column. Like what AI should really
be doing.
I'm writing that down right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Last question is, your kids may be listening, or one day we'll force them to.
Yay.
Anything that you'd like to say to them?
You're just everything, just the best thing in my life. And I would say that to my stepkids as well. That it's just to be able to share another human being's life like that. Adam Gopnik, the New Yorker writer, did this wonderful book, Paris to the Moon, which was about having a family in Paris. And he expressed that so well in that book that, you're just guiding this new human being into the world, and that's just the greatest privilege. And it sounds like a cliche, but it's just kind of the truth.
Yeah, no, it's true. People have been taking this question very sincerely. I feel like if someone asked me, I'd be like, "Go to bed."
Well, exactly.
But maybe it's just me on a Monday.
Date night.
Oh my God! Yes.
Love it.
Man. Well, thank you, Rana. This was so special.
Yeah, you're amazing.
Thanks for letting me ask these questions.
Thank you for doing this and for coming up with such a brilliant and necessary idea. I cannot wait to hear what everybody else says and be part of this community.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you are part of it, so thank you.
Yay.
I just know what it feels like to hear the crying and how it just like immediately 3/4 of my brain is no longer in my head.
I was gonna be her doing the interview, milk just starts.
That's actually never happened to me. I think it's because maybe I didn't have this overwhelming supply.
Oh, interesting. I could be I hear other babies in the supermarket or something, and it's just immediately.
I know. What do they call it? Like a wet wife? What's the wet nurse? Like within a community where it's like you're sort of sharing breast milk, and someone might be like
wet nurse.
Wet nurse? Okay. Not wet wife.
Wet wife. I don't know about that one, Sarah.
I think it was because I was thinking midwife. And then I was wet wife, which also is weird. Why are we calling it a wife, a midwife?
I don't know.
I never thought about that until now. I'm like, this isn't the wife?
What?
What? Wet wife is a whole different story.
Yeah, wait, I actually don't know the background about midwifery, why it would be midwife. Unclear,
weird.
but we love them.
We do.
We love them.
Oh my God. We also love Rana.
She
And
is so incredible.
I know.
I had so many thoughts while she was talking.
Yeah.
But the primary one was that I feel like she is the person that people want to be, but are too scared to actually do it. So that's why they find her so comforting. She talked about being at that meeting and looking at the guy next to her and being like, "Are you lonely?"
Yes.
And it's like, everyone wants to be the person who's comfortable or confident enough to say that, but no one feels like they can because of the fear of judgment or whatever. And the fact that she's able to do that seemingly unapologetically, or at least to me, hearing her speak, it sounds like she said it and it's just like, yeah, this is
totally,
I'm feeling it and I'm not scared to say that.
Yeah. She also seems very, and I almost wonder, I'm like, is this real? But she doesn't seem to, she just is, one thing happens, we move on. There isn't like this endless rumination about stuff, either in anticipation or post making a choice about anything or being decisive about anything in any way. And I agree.
Similar to April.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. What is it about these women? We need to check their genetic makeup.
It really is. I mean, Tina as well, of like, this is what I'm doing. Move on. Yeah. Like, I guess it's also, I guess I can resonate. I don't know that I would actually act on it in the same way. I wish I could. Yeah. And we will see. But like, maybe because you recognize once you become a mother that like none of that really matters. And that
wasted energy.
The world is so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very strong, very decisive, very sure. Again, I want to know if that was real. Because who is? You know what I mean? And also sort of in retrospect versus in the moment, how did we feel? And also being not indecisive, but just sort of, she seemed very clear. And what I was going to almost ask her more about was like, she seemed in every phase, there was a goal created for that phase. And everything else sort of was oriented around how can I not leverage, but what needs to be true in every part of my life for me to be able to achieve this goal that isn't like a personal goal, like a goal of saving up enough money to help pay for college for my kids, or have enough money to be an individual brand.
Very practical and like logical.
Yeah.
This is my step that I'm taking right now.
Correct. And so what we're doing is in support of reaching that other place.
Yeah.
Which also allows, the occasional spiral with a 3-year-old who's melting down, which is my morning today. Like those are speed bumps on the path to getting us all to that other place. And I think that does help hold things in perspective. Yeah. I think the other thing I wanted to say too was that idea of where we started the conversation of this choice that she had made around being an individual contributor versus pursuing this editor track. That was so formative for me to see her as a successful person having made that choice without insecurity about it, because I was in a world where success is becoming a manager. Success is running a group of people. And she really was the only example of anyone in my life as a woman, I would say, who'd made that choice and was good with it and was better for it. And so it really did stick with me a lot. I think, especially at Google, where if any Googlers are listening, the endless toil of being an individual contributor, and maybe one day if I could be trusted to manage 2 people. So yeah. And then I think, to her, it was just made me feel like I wasn't failing at this thing that would actually have ruined my life in retrospect. So yeah, I'm glad that she brought that up, and I hope others can benefit from it too, because I think it is about taking control and establishing kind of your own goal. Like maybe that's related. This whole theme of agency and control is like, for that to be true, you have to come up with what you want.
Yep.
And then you can control or find what levels of control do you need in order to create the life that you want.
Yeah.
So anyway, very much admire her. She also like swims in so many interesting circles. I feel like I want to ask her even more about like, I don't know. I know she bumped shoulders, rubbed elbows. What do you do?
Wet wife.
Sheryl Sandberg. Like I wanted to get more. I feel like there are more stories within her, and she's being very responsible journalist by not sharing them. All right. So our quick thoughts on joy for the week. Joyfulness and joy. Do we have any? Who goes first? Who knows right now where their joyfulness is?
Well, hold on.
Or will
Going
be.
back just a little. Do you need to process your morning?
Oh, yeah. Yes. As I told you, I was like, I'm not stressed. Everything is fine. And then clearly Jason's away, which has been which he doesn't want to be, but there have been a series of days and nights and mornings where he's been away. So I'm doing, the 3-kid drop off in the morning and then the 3-kid bedtime at night. And thank God we have Callie, our nanny, in the middle. But I love my kids. And
I love my kids. I love
the morning. And our littlest is 3.5, 3 3/4, and is in some crotchety, cranky, spicy phase where just you're just walking on eggshells the whole time. Like she'll be laughing and giddy, and then like something will not quite go as she expected, and then it just turns into like on the verge of a tantrum, and that's almost worse than the full tantrum because then you're like, well, maybe if I operate right, I can like kind of de-escalate.
Are you scared of your 3-year-old?
Yeah. But anyway, it was classic like this morning. And as we've always talked about, the problem is always when there's a time sensitivity to this, because we have to get everyone in the car by 8 a.m. And then I wanted to get back here to get on the video, whatever this, not the phone, whatever this is, on the Wi-Fi, on the internet. Yeah, to do this interview, which there's plenty of time for, but only if everything went as you needed it to go.
So, plenty of time for
it's get everyone out, and then she's our oldest. Thankfully, they're 10 and 8 and relatively self-sufficient and like know how to handle themselves. So life could be so much harder. But they were ready to go, and then of course the youngest, the terrorist 3-ish-year-old, was unhappy with everything that was happening and wanted to do it all herself and want to get dressed. And it's 7:57, and she's like, I don't want to wear this. I don't want to wear a sweatshirt. I want to wear a different shirt. I want to do myself. And I'm like coming in and out. Like I'm trying all of the tactics. Dr. Becky, wherever you are, I am doing everything right. And then I came back in at the very last, like 5th time, trying to be all cool and calm. And she was like, she had her shirt was like just around her neck, like her arms weren't in her shirt, and it's freezing outside. And I was like, let's get your shirt on. And then she was like, no, I want to do it myself. And then like ran away or didn't look at me. So bad. And then I was just like, we need to go. And then, but instead I just yelled at her, and it was like, fine, do it. And she looked at me with terror in her eyes, which is so sad. And it was one of those things where like it feels briefly, momentarily cathartic, like the first decibel that exits your mouth, and then after that you're just sort of like stuck in it. And here's the 2 beautiful things did happen. One is I got to go back around and apologize and say, I'm sorry, I yelled. I got overwhelmed and frustrated. It's not okay to yell at anybody. And thankfully she sort of like got it in between tears. The other thing is, last night we were reading this book called Sometimes I Kaplume, which is a book for, quote, kids with big feelings. Okay. So I got to say, Mom kaplumed. And she kind of got it. But it's so hard. You're just really trying to get them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we got out, and then, oh my God. And then we got the oldest 2 to their school, and then little 3.5-year-old to her school, which is later. And we're in the parking lot, and she is obsessed with having a ponytail. And of course, through all of this, she'd like lost her ponytail, like her hair tie.
No, of course.
Which has never happened. And then we're trying to get out of the car, and now it's like close to like, okay, interview is happening. I need to like get out. She's like, I lost my hair tie. I don't know where it is. And I was like, the fuck is your hair tie? No, I held it. Yeah, I didn't kaploom again. But it was one of those, you just feel it bubbling up in you. Like I can, and if I could walk away, I could. But I was like, I need to find this hair tie. Where's this hair tie? And I couldn't find the hair tie. And
you start making a hair tie from
totally. I was looking at how can I jerry rig. No, totally. Literally, there was a mask in the whatever the thing is under the armrast, and I was like, okay, worst case, I will rip this like bungee side stretchy cord thing from it, and I will tie it together, and it'll be a thing.
Moms who do it all, baby.
Thank God she ended up getting out. She didn't lose her shit over this. Amazingly, we hand her over to her amazing teachers, one of whom was like, I think we have a hair tie inside anyway.
Perfect.
And I was like, thank you. But it was one of those things where you just need to like say that this happened. And it is what these moments where we're just doing all the things at once. And unfortunately there's a time sensitivity to it, is when it's just, I don't know. Sometimes you just have to, I guess, kaploom or just let go and be late. Anyway, thank you for asking. That was my morning.
You needed to get it out. It happens. You're amazing. She's not going to hold it against you.
So on that note, where's my joy? Where's your joy?
Your joy?
I might take this Warren Buffett advice and be like, let me find an hour and make it the best hour. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to that's the objective of it. I like that idea.
Yes.
Give myself permission to just do something that I want to do that'll make me excited.
That is a good thing for us both and everyone else to listen to.
Yeah.
Because I feel like often we, even in our joyfulness, it's like outsider things.
True.
I'm happy because someone else, outside influence. So maybe next week, after we have a Warren Buffett week, we're going to have our moments of joyfulness are going to be self-created.
Yes. Maybe my other moment of joy will be just coming up with hypotheticals of what Warren Buffett does for his hour.
I know. I'm like, you have an hour a day that you just get to do whatever you want.
I actually believe that part. I'm more curious what really blows his hair back, What is the thing? I hope it's something completely unexpected.
Really, really good.
Some yoga.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, look at us. Another one in the books. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us.
Thanks for putting up with us and baby.
I know.
But I know. Did all right. We made
everyone out there. You're doing a great job.
You are.
You're doing a great job. And take the control back, whether it's from corporate America or from your 3-year-old.
And it's okay to kabloom.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we can reach even more rock stars like you. The Mothers is a production of Backline Media, shining a light on those who carry the team.